Reminiscence. So Reminiscence is a film that's set in the future. It's set after a war that is mentioned at times, and global warming's taken full effect. It's set in the city of Miami, the waters have risen, people sort of live on the rooftops and stuff like that. And because it's such a bleak and miserable future, people like to go back and revisit memories using like a special device in order to sort of relive some happiness. Now, this was an interesting concept, even though you could possibly see how it was like referencing a film like Inception, where it's all about sort of, being asleep and accessing memories, and, that's where people get more enjoyment. But still, it's a bit of a way off from that sort of thing, but it's a similar sort of groundwork. Now, if you've seen trailers or posters, you know that the main man in this is Hugh Jackman, and, with Hugh Jackman, I think that's where the pull was for this movie. That's sort of what got me thinking, I'll go check this out, because, with Hugh, at least you're going to get a decent performance from him, but of course you need to know if the rest of the movie is going to hit those heights as well. Now, the story started off decent, but the style was a noticeable factor. The use of narration, which was Hugh Jackman narrating, and the heavy use of exposition from the start, it felt a little bit, okay, this is what they're going for this movie, so it's very on the nose, and what that does for me is it shows like a lack of respect for the viewer, in terms of it doesn't consider us smart enough to figure out the plot, or it's a case of, the director thinking they don't want to try and weave the plot out that way. They just want to give us the information, so it feels a little bit cheap. It feels a little bit easy, and it feels like they think, let's just tell them everything. When you compare that to a movie like Inception, which really makes you work, really makes you think, really makes you try and figure things out, and will have you thinking by the end of the movie, and that's a whole lot more enjoyable experience, I think. But like I said, with Hugh Jackman, he was his usual great self. He's very dedicated to the role. You know what you're getting. If everything about the movie is bad, he's going to be the good part. That's not me saying everything about the movie was bad, though. Thandie Newton was also good as well. She was sort of like a secondary character. I thought she was strong. She's obviously from Westworld. That's what I've seen her in before. But she was a good addition to this movie, and she definitely did well alongside Jackman. But the performance of Rebecca Ferguson, I found just odd. She came across in this movie like she couldn't act, which is strange. I'm guessing that's just down to the writing, but she just came across very, very strange, a bit wooden at times, and just like it's kind of like when her and Hugh were kind of going through their romance, as you've seen from the trailers. It just felt like they were living in fantasy land. Like it didn't really feel like it felt real. It did not feel real at all. It felt very fairy tale-ish. And yeah, it just sort of came across as a little bit cringe, just because it didn't feel that real. I mean, real can be cringe, but, this just felt very not real. And unfortunately, even though the film started off well with this cool concept, and you do wonder where it's going to go, it just created more like rabbit holes to get lost down, and, just all these plot holes. And the thing is with this is that they unwound the plot, but there was no breadcrumbs set before. And what I mean by that is they were just sort of saying, this happened because of this. Like, they would just show you why a certain thing was a certain way, but there was like no build up to why it could have been that thing. So essentially what it felt like they were doing is they were just making up the story as they were filming it. It's like they'd film a scene, and it's like, okay, so why is that thing that way? Okay, we'll just explain something in this next scene. It didn't feel like they had this set from the start. It didn't feel like it really was a fixed plot from start to finish with all these little points in between. It just felt like chunks. This will happen, this will happen, this will happen, and then that'll all happen because of this one thing that we'll just explain real quick. Hugh Jackman was the best part of the film. His acting was very good, of course, but I couldn't help but compare this to his role in Prisoners. If you've seen that movie, you already know it's just a fantastic movie. It's one of my favourite movies of all time. If you haven't seen it, do see it. It's a movie I recommend to absolutely everyone. If they haven't seen it, you have to watch it. But in that movie, he plays a somewhat similar role, a man who's looking for something or someone, and he won't really stop, and he's very dedicated to finding it. But then you compare the two, versions of Hugh Jackman, the one in Prisoners and the one in Reminiscence, and you just see how well it was handled in Prisoners and how well it was executed. And despite how he was putting in, a very good performance again in this movie, it's the writing and the direction that's unfortunately let him down and stopped him from hitting anywhere near those heights again. I wouldn't say this is a bad film, okay? This is by no means a bad film. You see some of the reviews, I think they're maybe slightly harsh, but I don't think this is an awful movie or anything. It's just a movie that had potential, it had a good idea, but it just couldn't execute it as well as it should have. It really did have a good idea here, something that was a little bit different. Taking ideas maybe from other things, but it was something fresh and something that could have been done better. I understand why it can be underwhelming based on the cast, because they did get a good cast thrown in here. And clearly the budget was pretty decent too, in terms of like the effects of like living in a flooded Miami and that sort of thing. There was a cool concept buried in here, but like I said, style, execution, just not right for this. Not right. It just didn't work. The two things didn't go together well, which is a shame, because when you have a cool plot but then it's not done well, you just think it's a waste. You think, wow, they could have got that better. They could have done that better, and they could have made a much better movie. Overall, for me, A Reminiscence gets a 5.5 out of 10. Unfortunately, just wasn't hitting the heights. Excuse me, my throat today. Yeah, I don't want to put you off seeing this. Like, if you're interested to see it, I'd say go and see it. Sort of get your own views on it. But if you're a good judgment in terms of trailers as well, you can sort of tell whether a movie is going to be good and what sort of movie it's going to be. You see the trailers, you're a little bit, that doesn't look like it's going to be as good as I hope it would. And that's the case with the film as well. But Reminiscence, have you seen it? If you have, let me know what you thought about it. Do you agree? Do you think it was slightly worse even, or slightly better? Do let me know. But yeah, thank you all very much for watching. I'll see all of you in the next one. Bye bye.